Okay, so now we've arrived into Jeddah, right? And this is now the journey into Mecca. So I'm just going to address one or two questions here, and then I will continue. Um, is it wasteful to go for Umrah often? Um, yes, if someone goes to Umrah, well, okay, it depends on the purpose here. One, we should be balanced, meaning that, I'm giving the wealth that Allah has given me. I can't just neglect the needs of people and the needs of the people, the poor people and the destitute, and not give in charity and just use my money to go for Umrah whenever I want. At the same time, I have to recognize Umrah as an opportunity for me to fulfill a sunnah and for me to spiritually reset myself. So it's about knowing who you are. If I feel that I'm very dependent on making this journey and this is what's going to keep me alive spiritually, well, then that money that's spent for that path is rewarded. So it depends on everyone's individual situation. There's a question about wearing ihram, the state of ihram for people who have medical devices, insulin pumps, neurostimulators. There's no problem with wearing medical devices in a state of ihram. There's no problem with that. And is there carpet to pray on in the haram? There is carpet in the masjid right now. They had removed it for COVID at one point, but it is there. It's up to you. If you prefer to take your own prayer mat on top of that, you can, but it's not necessary. In the mataf area, which we'll talk about in a moment, there are not rugs, so you may consider taking a prayer rug. Okay, being persistent with children or talking in a high tone with children, does that fall under arguing when in ihram? Yes, disciplining a child is permissible, but arguing with a child is not permissible. So if I'm disciplining them and I'm raising my voice because I need them to get the point, that's permissible. But if I'm raising my voice and screaming because that makes me feel better, and that's just my own reaction to my heart rate being up, that's not permissible. Okay. All right, let's continue. So now we've arrived. This is the travel from, again, Jeddah to Makkah Mukarramah. If you're going by car or bus, there's also a train that now goes between these two cities. And what you'll notice is along the journey, somewhere along this path over here, if you're going by car or by bus, you'll come across these sort of markings. And if you look at them closely, you'll notice, that these are the markings of the haram boundary. So this is the sacred space that we're talking about, that in order to enter it, we have to enter into a sacred form of a state of ihram, right? So these boundaries now come, and this boundary is very special because these are defined spaces outside of Mecca and Medina that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created as a sanctuary. This is now, and our mindset should be when we're entering this space that we're now entering both a physical and a spiritual sanctuary. Physical in the sense that this is a place where a blade of grass cannot be cut, a tree cannot be cut down, animals cannot be hurt. In fact, when they're constructing, in the haram, like say they have to make a building and they have to move a tree, they actually remove it from its roots and they plant it elsewhere because even cutting down a tree is not permissible. So this is a physical sanctuary that we're entering and a spiritual sanctuary. This is a place where even when the most extreme fitna that will come at the end of time, which is the fitna of Dajjal, when that will come, the most extreme form of fitna, the two places where Dajjal will not be able to enter or cross is the boundaries of Makkah and Medina, in particular the haram boundary. So we should be in this mindset as we're crossing this border and we're seeing it. Many a times we're sleeping because we're tired from the whole plane ride. We should try to awaken and recognize that we're about to approach the haram of Makkah, and this is a spiritual sanctuary for me. And Ya Allah, in the same way that you've created protection for insects and animals and trees when they enter into the space, Ya Allah, I ask that you also make this a place of protection from me, for me as well. Protection from what? So Allah Ta'ala mentions in the Quran, وَمَنْ دَخَلَهُ كَانَ آمِنًا. Whoever enters into this space is protected. Aman is granted to that person. So we should ask for protection when we're crossing this boundary. That Ya Allah, protect me from difficulties, protect me from hardships, protect me from the fire of hell. In the same way that I'm entering into this sanctuary now, Ya Allah, you allow me to have an eternal sanctuary in Jannah as well. So this should be our mindset when we are entering into this sacred space. We should ask protection for ourselves from the fire of hell, from nafs and shaitan. We should seek protection for our families from all of the difficulties and insecurities of this world. And we should ask aman for all the people that we love as well as we're entering into this space. And there's different markings. This is another marking you see here on the right side. This is another marking that marks the haram. And we should, when we're entering the haram, we should be mindful of even intending wrong. Allah Ta'ala mentions in the Quran, وَمَنْ يُرِدْ فِيهِ بِإِلْحَادٍ بِظُلْمٍ نُذِقْهُ مِنْ عَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. In general, when we're in a particular place, if right here, if I intend to do wrong but I never actually execute the action, I'm not held accountable for it. But in the haram, because it's such a sacred place, the Quran mentions that even a person who intends to do wrong is punished because of it. Because even our thoughts should be one of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we're in this very special place. So now we enter into Makkah Mukarramah. And the first thing that we should do is we should settle into our hotel room. Now this is something that we have to sort of remind ourselves of, because sometimes we come and the first thing we want to do is we get off the bus or we get off the train and we just want to rush to the Kaaba, we want to leave our luggage in the lobby. But we have to take care of ourselves and our luggage before we actually proceed to Makkah. So we should settle into our hotel room. That means put away our luggage. That means, make sure that our children are attended to and things are okay. One of the first things that we should do is we should make sure we put away the soap, because we often, inadvertently start washing our hands with soap when we go into the bathroom. So I recommend just replacing it. If you have sanitizer, unscented, just put the soap away and put the sanitizer next to the sink. Pray any salahs that may have been missed. In the journey, it's possible we may have missed a prayer, or maybe we performed it in a way that was not perfect. Maybe our wudu was, questionable. So we would repeat any salahs. Or if the time of salah has come in for maghrib, we should pray the prayer either in the hotel room or if we're at the masjid, we go into the masjid and pray. And we should eat, we should rest. The idea here being, we shouldn't rush to start our umrah. We should be energetic, we should be refreshed, we should be in a proper state when we're beginning the actual umrah. So this is what's recommended by our ulama. Then we should make our wudu again when we're now ready. We're refreshed, we've eaten, we feel fine. If we needed a nap, we've taken a nap. We should refresh our wudu, because wudu is actually required for part of the umrah. And we'll talk about that in a moment. And then we should choose an uninterrupted time to perform umrah. Meaning, if I choose to perform umrah at Asr prayer, then I'm going to be interrupted for Asr, maybe Maghrib, then Isha, and every single time that happens, I'll have to stop my Umrah where I am, pray the prayer, resume. And that's fine if you're comfortable, but sometimes it gets a little bit tricky, because now I'm separated, because the women and men are separated at Salah time, so my family's in a different part of the masjid and I'm over here, and I have to meet them afterward. So choose an uninterrupted time. Ideal times tend to be after Isha, before Tahajjud. Tahajjud time, it gets very busy. And another good time to do it is maybe an hour or two after the Fajr prayer, but before 10 or 11 when it gets really hot. So choose a time where Salah will not be interrupting us to perform our Umrah. So this is just a view of the complex today, which is Masjid al-Haram. And just to sort of outline, most of the hotels are kind of in this back region over here now. All the way over here. So anything kind of in this area here is all sort of the hotels. Most people are going to be staying somewhere in one of these complexes, and they're sort of going to be heading in this direction when they approach Masjid al-Haram. Now, just to zoom in and show you, just to give you an example, just to highlight a few things here, right, just for our own education. This here is called Babu Salam. Now, this is the gate the Prophet ﷺ would enter when he wanted to go to the Kaaba. In fact, his house, when he used to live before he had migrated, his house was on this side over here. So this was the entrance that he used to make. So it's recommended to try to enter from that gate. There's another gate over here called Bab al-Umrah. So when we're entering Umrah, but the reality is in this day and age, it's very difficult to choose where we're going to enter from because of restrictions and things. My understanding is that currently the entrance for Umrah is going to be from this main gate right in front, which is called Bab Fahad. So we go to our hotel. So let's just take a step back and remind ourselves. So recap. So we've arrived at the airport. We've gone through all of we've gotten our bags, etc. We've taken our bus or train. We've settled into our hotel room. We've done the things that we needed to do to take care of ourselves. When I'm talking about resting and napping, I'm not referring to delaying, I'm going to I'm going to sleep for 6, 7, 8 hours, go shopping, and get the things that I need, come back, go to a restaurant, have a meal, and then come back and do Umrah. That's not the length of time we're saying. We should be eager to perform Umrah, but we should only take the rest and the food necessary to refresh us to go ahead and proceed. So maybe that's 1 or 2 hours for most people, maybe 2, 3, 4 hours if you need to take a brief nap. And then we refresh our wudu, because we want to make sure we're in a state of wudu, and then we start walking toward Masjid al-Haram to perform the rites of Umrah. Now we're entering Masjid al-Haram, and for anyone who's not been to the Haram before, it's just a striking masjid, and just an incredible way. I mean, before you even see the Kaaba, just being able to see the exterior of Masjid al-Haram, it's just an incredible view. And as we're entering the masjid, we should be imagining that we're entering now the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this should be our mindset. Sometimes we just kind of haphazardly walk in. But imagine if we had an invitation to the White House, and now our limousine picks us up from our hotel, and we now come to the door of the White House, and we're about to walk in. That creates a little bit of anxiety within us. I mean, at the most, excitement, anxiety, maybe a little bit of worry, what's going to happen next? We're entering the house of the Lord of the universe. We're entering the house of the Lord of the universe, who's created every single thing from the beginning of time until the end, who's been responsible for every aspect of our life, who has taken care of every single facet of our life. Now we're entering into His home. What should our state be? What should our state be? So we enter the masjid with our right foot, as we enter any masjid with the right foot. We recite the dua for entering the masjid just like we would any other masjid. Allahumma iftah li abwaba rahmatik. Oh Allah, open the doors of your mercy. This is the ideal way of doing this. Obviously, if we don't do it, it's fine. But this is the sunnah. We make the intention for i'tikaf. I'tikaf in the sense that whatever time I'm spending, Ya Allah, I want to get the reward of the i'tikaf. We make this intention anytime we enter the masjid, even over here. But we should make this intention also when we're entering the masjid here for Umrah. And then finally, our habit is that when we enter any masjid, we rush to perform our 2 rak'ah of Tahiyyatul Masjid. There's no Tahiyyatul Masjid in Masjid al-Haram when we're in a state of Ihram. The Tahiyyatul Masjid, the greeting of the masjid, is actually to go straight and start the tawaf. Okay, so that's how we greet Masjid al-Haram. Then we start walking toward the Kaaba. And so Masjid al-Haram is a huge complex, right? And you're going to start walking as you enter the masjid, and you're going to be approaching the Kaaba, which is going to be essentially directly in front. As we're walking toward the Kaaba, we are going to be reciting the talbiyah still. Right? This hasn't stopped. Remember, the talbiyah started, we entered the state of ihram, whether it was on the plane or at the layover, and we're continuing to recite it through our transition points at the airport, at the bus or the train, at the hotel. As we're walking toward Masjid al-Haram, we're still reciting the talbiyah out loud for the men and silently for the women. And even as we enter into the masjid, we're still reciting the talbiyah. We're keeping our head lowered. The reason we're keeping our head lowered is because we want to make the moment where we see the Kaaba special, because that's the time the dua is accepted. So we keep our head lowered so that we don't inadvertently cast our eyes onto the Kaaba. And we walk slowly into this area called the mataf. Now, this image shows what we're referring to when we're talking about the mataf. The mataf is this area around the Kaaba, which is this whole marble area. And this is what's generally referred to as the mataf, i.e. the place where tawaf is done. And in this area, people are often praying, they're circling around the Kaaba, doing tawaf, etc. This area is called the mataf. We find a comfortable place to make dua in that mataf area. So we don't want to just rush right in. We want to find a place off to the side, maybe move back a little bit so that we're not disturbing people. We don't want to attract attention because sometimes they want people to keep moving, so we don't want to create a big crowd right in the center of the mataf. Move somewhere to the side and to the back, and then we lift our gaze up upon the Kaaba, and then we make our dua. Now, anyone knows that who has not been to the Haram or has gone to the Haram, that initial gaze upon the Kaaba is perhaps the most special moment of their life. Right? There's no words to describe it, and there's really nothing to even say right now. When a person, even someone who's gone repeatedly, that Umrah, when they come and they initially see the Kaaba, it's a very special moment. It's overwhelming emotionally, it's overwhelming spiritually. And this is the time the ulama mention is a time where dua is accepted. Any dua that a person makes is accepted. So we should be very particular about this, and we should plan this out. Dua at this time, when we're initially gazing upon the Kaaba, it's a time where dua is accepted, and we should spend time making dua there. The initial dua is what's being referred to as one that's accepted, but the first few duas that come to your mind, those are all going to be accepted, which means that we should make dua there, and we should, and of those things that are most important. But we shouldn't spend too much time. What I mean by this is that it's not that because I'm standing there and now this is an opportunity, I shouldn't stand there and I'm standing there for 15 minutes now, my heart is somewhere else, and the initial experience of the emotion of looking at the Kaaba has now passed. No. Once that emotional experience looking at the Kaaba has moved on, you end your dua and then you move on and proceed toward tawaf. What are some du'as that a person can make? These are some du'as that ulama recommend. For instance, Oh Allah, grant me Jannah without accounting. Because if this du'a is accepted, what other du'a do I need? Right? What other du'a do I need to accept getting into Jannah bighayri hisab? Some ulama mentioned to ask dua for Allah Ta'ala's love, because if I have Allah's love, what else do I need? Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he says that when we see the Kaaba for the first time, we should make this dua, which is that, oh Allah, accept all of my future duas. Right? What an incredible dua. If, Ya Allah, this dua is going to be accepted, my dua right now is that, Ya Allah, you accept every future dua that I ever make also. So you can make it whatever you want it to be. Personalize your dua. It could be, maybe there's some difficulty that you're experiencing and now you're going for Umrah and, you want that difficulty alleviated. This is the time to ask. It could be there's some other desire that you have in your heart. This is the time to ask for that dua. Okay. So we've now ihram and now we're going to begin our tawaf.